Dobrý den, vítáme vás u další epizody našeho podcastu nejen pro spoluhráče Decathlonu. Děkujeme, že nás sledujete na Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, ale i na Facebooku, Instagramu, kam dáváme i další zajímavý obsah. Vítejte v Decastu. Od mikrofonu vás zdraví Peťa
a Peťa. V minulém díle jsme se zaměřili na naše kola a dnes si tak trochu zacestujeme. A tímto proto končíme s češtinou, začneme s angličtinou, protože jsme si pro vás připravili speciální mezinárodní díl s jedním z našich takzvaných expatů, s naším kolegou ze Španělska, Servandem Quevedem. Hello, Servando. Pleasure to have you here in the podcast. Could you at the beginning introduce yourself a little bit to both our teammates and also to our customers?
Of course. Děkuji moc za pozvání. This is my limit. I'm sorry to do in English because I didn't arrive to learn Czech. Then my name is Servando Quevedo. I'm from Spain, from Canary Island. That is surprise for me because here in Czech Republic many people knows Canary Island. It's super big pleasure. Then from Gran Canaria. I have 41 in less than 1 month. Years old and married with one daughter of 7 years old. I am in Decathlon for 17 years already. Then I start like sales assistant because I was in the university studying and so on, then doing the trucks and downloading the trucks and everything. 1 year and a half after I spent department manager, I did store manager already. I moved from Canary Island to Bilbao, 4 years store manager. And then I moved to France to the passion brand, to Tribord, like retail supplier. I spent 4 years there. And then I moved to a beautiful city and beautiful country, Prague, then Czech Republic, and 5 years and a half already. It was the 3rd of 2016 that I arrived here with a lot of snow and cold for me, for a Canarian guy, yeah. Now it's 5 years and a half, yes. Super, super happy. I'm happy to be here, thank you.
Okay, thank you Servando a lot. I can see that you basically made it to warm up yourself. It is customary in our podcast that we have a little warm up prepared for our guests. And we have a little warm-up prepared for you as well. We have 5 very tricky questions for you that you have to answer.
Good.
So if you're ready, we can fire.
I like the tricky questions.
Okay, so let's kick it off. Question number 1. Which of the islands of the Canary archipelago is the biggest in terms of area?
The biggest?
Yeah.
Tenerife.
Tenerife. Bingo. Yeah. Which of the Canary Islands is your favorite?
La Palma, of course.
Yes. Bingo again.
Okay, now back to Czech Republic. How many expats or foreigners, foreign colleagues, are there working all together in our Decathlon offices in Prague?
Counting with me?
Yes.
5.
We counted more, 7.
7?
Yeah, but
Wow.
you were close.
You were really close, and even for us, it was a tricky question.
You fail.
Question number 4. Which is the smallest Decathlon store in Czech Republic in terms of sales area?
Třebíč. No. Sorry, yeah. Strava Centrum.
Wow, great. Good
Very
correction. That is correct. With 800 square meters.
Yeah.
And last question is about Czech language. How do you say bon appétit in Czech?
Dobrá chuť.
Perfect.
This I know.
Perfect, yes.
And pivo, prosím. This I also know.
Okay, so you passed. We can continue.
Yeah.
Get beef.
I think the most useful phrases are there.
Of course.
You can.
I survived more than 5 years with this.
Okay, great. Now, Servando, we have something we need to validate with you. We heard that you worked as a bouncer at a disco once. Is it correct?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Did you like the job?
No. More at that time, I spent 1 year Yeah, because I had 20 years old, 19, 20. Yeah, it's from 19 years old to 20. But it was, it's not good life. You work every weekend in the night, and at the beginning, yes, I enjoy, and after it was really a job, because at the beginning it's like, hey, it's the disco, and then you have a free pass for all the discos in Gran Canaria, but finally you never did. I never did, because you work and you go to sleep, and then you go there again, and after all, it's a good experience, and that's it.
I can only confirm that you are not just a good bouncer, but a good dancer as well, because we had some options to see you
and good singer
hit the floor.
too.
Yeah. So definitely a good experience for you. Now let's go towards Decathlon more. When did you first see Decathlon in your life? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember. Because my favorite sport is martial arts. I did all my life, but all my life I started with 7 years old, and then I did competition and so on, and I was always searching for the products and so on. And in Gran Canaria it was not exist yet Decathlon, but they opened in Tenerife. And then I took even the boat, because at that time it was not able for me to pay the plane. I took the boat that is less expensive to go to boat. It's a big boat. It's doing the transportation, also the trucks. And you take 1 hour, and to arrive there to Tenerife, of course, to visit. But the main target for me was to visit Decathlon La Laguna, that it was 8,000 square meters. And I remember very, very well from the really beginning. I was walking there, and I say, wow, this is a paradise. It's a paradise like a sport guy. I never thought in my life a place to work on in the future. It's honestly, for me, it was the place to buy everything for me. And then I visited 3-4 times. That is to move another island. It's not so simple. And then it was, I think it was in 2002, 2001, 2002.
And 8,000 square meters, you said, right?
It's in 2 floors, 4,000 and 4,000. Yeah, it's a big machine. In fact, at that time, it was the 4th most important in Spain. They opened and bam, it was super. This is why the range, the offer proposal there, it was amazing. You can imagine, I come from the island. Okay, it's important city. Las Palmas is the 8th most important city in Spain, but even you have the small sport shoppings. It was never like 4,000. And then you arrive there, it's 8,000. It's your dream. It's like, wow. And as I did the Camino de Santiago, I don't know if you know that it's to walk 800 kilometers in the north of Spain, from the border with between France and Spain, in Los Pirineos, until Santiago de Compostela, that is Galicia, is exactly in the opposite way. Then I bought everything in Decathlon. It's amazing.
Yeah, maybe just to add that our listeners can compare the size of stores. The biggest Czech store nowadays is in Brno, Modřice, and it's got almost 6,000 square meters. And the store that Servan talked about was even bigger. So that's really huge. We can find almost full range of all Decathlon products in one place.
All right, so maybe I would like to just add to Peter's question. So how did you get the idea to start working in Decathlon? Where did it come from?
Because I heard that they will arrive to Gran Canaria. They wanted to open there. And in fact, for me, the connection with the sport, it was always super strong. Because as I said, I was doing the competition in the martial arts. In fact, if I connected this with what I said before, that I was working 1 year during in the night in the discos and so on, it's really easy to fall down in the discos and this kind of life to fall down to the bad way. But for me, the sport kept me in the right way, and it's exactly one of the main reason why I stopped with working during the night. And then for me, the sport was always, like my really passion. It's even more. It's a way of life. Then I wanted to work on something about the sport, and I heard that they wanted to open. I was at that time studying in the university. I say, hey, why not? Why not? I was working in restaurants and so on at that time. It's like when you are in the university, you are searching your life as you can. You do this and then you do that. You're here. Okay, here there is this job and that job. And finally, I put my CV to Decathlon, to the company. I put there. Say, hey, as I have already the black belt of taekwondo and so on. Then it was a little bit the entry door to be in the interview with the guy who after it was my manager.
Okay, perfect. And you also mentioned you worked for Tribord, which is a special Decathlon brand, because Decathlon is just one big brand with many sport brands inside. Thank you. And Tribord is originally a water sport brand of Decathlon, close to the ocean. So to me, it seems to be a dream job working there. Did you like it working there, just very close to the ocean?
Because I spoke about my main sport, because I'm still around my 20 years old, 21. But from 21 years old, I started to do diving. In fact, as Canarian guy, honestly, you do surfing and bodyboard. This is like your mother get born you, and you are already with the shape, because it's like you're obliged. Then, of course, I did all my life bodyboard and so on, but it was not exactly my super passion. But diving, yes, from my 21 years old, something like this. And then when I entered in Decathlon, that I started to put aside a little bit taekwondo, because I did already competition. Then I finished and so on. I started to dig more and more in diving, and I passed. Then I'm instructor, in fact, of diving, because now I can say that I have two big passion, is the taekwondo and diving. Then, of course, for me, it was one target to go to Tribord. It was one target. And it's funny, because as I did bodyboard, surf, and diving, when I arrived to Tribord, I was in charge of a woman's swimsuit. Of course.
That's what we enjoy the most, usually.
It's okay, it's normal, we are in Decathlon. Finally, it's a perimeter. It's perimeter with the clear KPIs and so on. Doesn't care if you are selling women's swimsuits or snorkelings or whatever. But it's always the joke that they do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you know that the invention of women's swimsuit comes from Czech Republic? Because Jara Zimmerman, the famous inventor, he created this thing, and it's a hit.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's more like a legend, right?
Maybe, but I believe it.
Okay.
Women's swimsuit here that there is not beach. I don't know. You're preaching on me.
Peter is a good fan of Jara Zimmerman, which is a kind of legendary.
It's good to have
person.
legend. I believe it.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess you kind of miss the ocean, right?
Yeah, a lot. Every week. Mostly every weekend.
Yeah.
So the next question is logical then. Why did you decide to move to the Czech Republic, a landlocked country?
Why not? It's exactly because of this. Because I moved from Canary Island to Bilbao, but I live just in the border of the sea. Then I moved to France, but in the south, in the border of the sea. Then I'm a curious guy, and I'm married with a curious woman. Even more because she's from Argentina, then you can imagine. Then why not? Yeah, we wanted to discover even more the world and the different places. Then I knew that for me it will be quite different, maybe difficult or not. The difficulties depends of how you want to be in front of the light. No? If you, I know I'm a victim, I do this and so on, or really you say, I want to discover this. Come on, it's me who decide. And in fact, it was me who opened the possibility. After they know the door, I say, okay, Servan, we saw that in your mobility you put one of the places you put it was Prague, and why this? And after is why I'm here. But yeah, I miss, of course. And now after 5 years and a half, I can say that I miss a lot.
So maybe this is important to like point out. So you like felt that you are open to go to the Czech Republic, for example.
Yeah, of course. You know, in fact, it's family decision. Mm-hmm. For me, it's my wife who decide where she's able to go with me. Then my daughter, we will be 3 of us. And after it's me to decide if I can see the possibilities to have that job there or not. And what jobs are available is this. But of course, also it happens in the opposite way that I knew that it was some possibilities adapted to me, but the country was not adapted to my family life. Mm-hmm. And I said no.
But it's, however, it's still good to know that and Decathlon is really, it's important in Decathlon to have this certain mobility. And if you have this kind of mobility, you have all possibilities open. So
of course.
You're a very good example of that.
For me, and in fact I have to say, I repeat, when I joined Decathlon even to work, it was because I love the sport, but I never thought in my life to do a career inside. Then I said before that first time that I went to a Decathlon, I never thought to work. The second, we will open in Gran Canaria. Hey, why not? I will work there, but just because I'm studying in the university and then I can mix both. But I never thought to do a career. After when I entered, I said, whoa, the values and everything inside Decathlon, it make me be falling in love with the company, and I'm still after 17 years and a half. And then, it's question. I know that I'm from Canary Island, and I know very well that one day I will come back. This is clear. In Canary Island, there is the ocean, there is the sun, there is the good weather. Then I'm not worried. Because I know that I will come back. Today I'm still young and I want to discover the world. Then, of course, if the day I came here, I didn't came with the idea to be here for the rest of my life, because even if the Praga Castle is the beautiful in the world and Prague is amazing and Czech Republic is super place to live, it's not my place. Then I cannot imagine to live here the rest of my life. But I knew that I didn't come here to do this. I came here to have the experience, to live the experience. And when you do like this, it's super passionate, because you can take advantage the most. And you take advantage about the people, the culture, the food, everything, knowing that one day you will come back to your people, to your culture, to your weather. And for me, this is always give me a lot of serenity. Mm-hmm. A lot.
Well, thank you very much for saying this, because it's very nice to hear that Decathlon is here not only for like discovering your sport, but also discovering the world, So that's very nice to hear.
Of course.
And maybe at this point we could say, what do you actually do now in the Czech Republic? What is your job?
As you know, now I'm in transfer with Pepa Kalus. But what I did, it was the commercial, to lead the commercial team. It was all the commercial directors, the communication, the supply. Then it's a little bit to help the country project to build the strategies, the commercial strategies, and to well communicate it, and to assure that the stock is adapted to this or to that strategies. And of course, this is in the part of the strategies, but in another part that is the most important, I was here mostly to help the local people to grow. Finally, is to try to transfer as much as possible my knowledge that I took before, and I even took here during these years, to them to be able to take the leadership of the country, even all these strategies and so on in the future, and also to move to another countries and to move around the world, of course, knowing that one day they can come back to Czech Republic, of course. But this is one of the most important, is the transfer of the knowledge.
Mm-hmm. If you were to compare Spanish and Czech customers, Servan, do you think there is something maybe surprising, some surprising difference between these two sorts?
For me, it's not exactly I will not compare with the Spanish or not, because I think there is a very similar way of customers in whole Europe, but after there is specific in each country specificities. Here, what I was super surprised when I arrived, it was the technicity of the people. And it was amazed, because when I came here, I didn't visit before. Czech Republic, never, and Prague, never. I heard about Prague for family of mine, that they say, "Well, it's beautiful," and so on, but I was never here. Then I have some ideas that in the end, finally, it was completely not true, completely fake, Is the image like maybe it's like the Polish or Romanian customer and so on. It's completely bullshit. It's different. It's like the German customers. Really, for me, it's not too much difference. And in this, I always said that between low price or technicity, the Czech customer, they choose technicity. Of course, if you can choose technicity at the best price, is this. But if you take both, it's technicity. It's not like in Romania that, of course, it will be low price.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to really find the balance between the two, to offer to the right customers the right price for the right.
This is our job.
Yeah. And it's a nice job, of course. You mentioned, Servando, of course, water sports. That have to be your passion. You mentioned martial arts. But I have to ask you, how about football? Because you come from Spain, where football giants are based. So do you follow this sport at all?
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
I wanted to hear that.
I'm ultra fan. I have two teams. One is, of course, the national team, Spain. And the second, but the most important for me, is La Unión Deportiva Las Palmas. It's today a second division team, but it's historical first division team. And I'm ultra fan of this. Then I hate Barcelona, I hate Real Madrid, I don't like it. And in fact, now with the Super League, it's even better to don't speak, because I get fire. I burn. But of course, is in Spain, everyone, it's like everyone is football lover. It's like a religion, really. You speak with everyone, and normally the people, and this is something that I don't share, but normally the people used to have two teams. Your team from your city and so on, and then Madrid or Barcelona or Atlético de Madrid or Valencia, whatever. For me, it's not like this. For me, I'm Unión Deportiva Las Palmas, but from beginning, I have a lot of T-shirts and so on. When I was small, I was even in presentations of some players. Yeah. And I'm really fan of my small team.
Yeah, that's nice.
And I see all the matches. When I'm here, I have the in the YouTube and so on, you can connect it. I don't know why, but then in the second division you can see. It's perfect. Then sometimes it's not good, because I go to sleep quite warm. Lost.
Well, it's a really nice example of being a passionate fan and still stick to your team for such a long time. You're not so-called plastic fan.
No.
That's good news.
But my wife, she tells me that I am crazy. Why you follow this team that always is get you nervous? Yeah, but it's my team. I cannot. It's impossible to change. It's impossible. I cannot change for another one. No. It's I can even not imagine.
Okay, speaking of your wife, I know for a fact that she's a great cook. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so maybe my question is, what do you do to keep fit? Because I guess she cooks all these delicious meals for you. So how do you keep fit?
In fact, she's professional. She studied. But I think that this is one of the reasons, because I don't eat burgers and pizza and so on too much. I really eat really few times. Then when you eat a real food, normally it's less fat and so on. And after, of course, I do sport. I try to do as much as possible.
So she takes good care of your stomach.
It's for sure.
Yeah.
I always said that she's the cooker, but I do the best one that is to eat.
And you also said you have a little daughter. So does she know Decathlon? Does she like it? And maybe I also liked what you said, that when you were young, sport helped you to choose the right way. So I guess you also motivate her to do her favorite sports.
She's doing karate already, of course.
Oh, nice.
And sometimes with Papa, the weekends we practice together.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And she's strong, eh?
Yeah. I imagine she's winning all the time.
Yeah. But sometimes even too much. I have to say that. No, do here, bam, and she push. Wow. You say, hey, then careful. Yeah. Because I believe a lot in the values of the sport. Of course, I believe a lot in the values of the martial arts, because I don't say the combat sports. This is another values, but for me, there is not my part. It's the martial arts. Then there is a philosophy behind that. It's to respect the other, to respect the life, and so on. There are many things that is quite beautiful. It's area oriental and so on.
Many martial arts come from Asia. Maybe we can agree to
Mostly.
that. Many of them, and Asia is your future destination.
Yeah.
Destination of your future mission. What place are we talking about? Where are you going, Servan?
To China. I go to China. I cannot say exactly what I will do because it's not yet official. Then I cannot say before to say to the people who will be part of my team directly, just to respect them. But of course, I have to say that one of the reasons why I'm super interested in China is the martial arts. And one of the things that I spoke with my daughter, with Irene, about China is that we will practice Kung Fu together. Yeah, for sure. It's something that I want to do. But of course, it's not only because of this. It's a real change of culture. When you say, hey, you are visiting the world and you are, going around the world, but you didn't get out from Europe. Okay. China is different things, or Asia, in globally, Asia is different things. I'm still young, I feel motivated with energy. Irene, she has 7 years old. Then I think it's the perfect moment now to go. Antonella, she wants to go, of course, what I said before. Because it's important, I repeat, it's always important to be agree in the family way, to do everything with serenity. And we will go there. We are looking forward
Perfect.
to go.
So what are you looking forward to the most in China? To Kung Fu, maybe? You said it already.
No, this is about the sport, but I want to see how we can adapt to this culture so different, you know. I think I will not able to speak the language, unfortunately, because each one knows the capacities. And my capacity is not to speak different languages. I speak already 3, and I think my brain it's already stopped too much. But for example, my wife, yes, she speaks 5 languages. The Czech, she speaks Czech, and she started already to speak Chinese. And you listen, and you say, hey, "Come on, it's not possible." You know, to see how we can adapt in this, to like family, to visit not only China that I want, but all when you are in Asia. Okay, you take advantage and you visit the other countries and so on. Know the world, you know. And after, of course, the job, for sure. It's a main point. Is what I will do there if I feel that I can do. If I feel that the challenge is important and is nice, of course. This is why we go to China. We don't go to another country that we are also open to go, of course.
So we hope you will keep us posted what it's like in China. But on the contrary, is there anything we are going to miss from the Czech Republic?
From the Czech Republic, yeah, many things. Many things. First of all is Prague, honestly, because Prague is an exceptional city. But even the safe life you have here is something that I will miss. The beer. For sure. But
I'm really glad that you said it as a third thing, because normally people say it as first one, you know.
No,
it's good.
No, you know, because I am not beer drinking. I'm wine drinker. Drinker. I drink sometimes, but I'm more really with big difference. Then I will miss, but I don't drink. I don't know now. For example, I even cannot say when it was the last time I drink one beer. I think 2 months ago, or even more, maybe 3 months, yeah. But wine, it was last weekend, for example. But yeah, of course, the culture of the beer is what I wanted to say. The problem is that now it was closed. But for me, I love the Medvědku. You know, I started to go to Ufleku, Medvědku, and to the San Bernard, all this place, because it's more than the beer itself. It's the culture, and this what I love. To go there is I don't know. You drink something from the guys who are doing for more than 500 years. Not the same guys, of course, but with the Czech traditional food and in a place that is super old. This is what I will miss, and it's exactly this when I say that I will miss the beer.
Okay. Well, you can come visit anytime.
But you can come on this. Okay. Of course, I will.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the interview. Is there anything else you would like to add in the end?
No, that I hope that Las Palmas we will go to first division soon. I will let you know to everyone.
Okay, fingers crossed for that.
Of course.
And of course, fingers crossed for you and your family in China.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the interview. It was super nice.
Thank you.
Pleasure for us.
Super.
Tak a teďka přepneme zpátky do češtiny, abychom se s našimi milými posluchači rozloučili. Pokud se vám náš podcast líbí, nebo pro nás máte, věřme, že konstruktivní zpětnou vazbu, tak nám můžete dát vědět vaše dojmy na náš Facebook Decathlon Česká republika nebo na náš Instagram Decathlon.cz.
Děkujeme vám za pozornost, od mikrofonu se loučí Peťa
a Peťa.